Let's rank every Mets manager on a tier list. We're not doing interim guys. We're doing legitimate Mets hired managers. Got every single one of them on here. If you want to make a tier list for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description so you guys can go ahead and make your own. Send it to us on Twitter or Instagram. Going through this, there are not a lot of great ones, but the way tier lists work, S tier is the best, F is the worst, and we're going to start off with an absolute banger here, James, in Art Howe.
Art Howe, man. This is this is the first manager I really remember, and it's convenient as the first manager I really hated, just because it felt those teams were terrible, so it's hard to blame Art coming off those Miracle A's teams. But wow, it's just a bad vibe for him in New York.
Yeah, he won 42% of the games that he managed, which is just so bad. 3 different GMs in the 2 seasons that he managed the Mets, and a lot of the stuff that happened wasn't like totally his fault. He definitely wasn't a good manager. Also kind of crazy how bad the Wilpons were as an owner. They 100% leaked his firing to the media like weeks before the season ended, but we're like, you know what? We'll let him finish the season. So he was dead man walking at one point, and they gave him so much money at the time to be the manager. 4 years, $9.4 million. The worst thing he ever did, though. He was the Kaz Matsui thing, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, but that was also, again, kind of the front office's fault, where it seems like they promised Kaz Matsui shortstop, and then in doing so, they took their dynamic young shortstop, Jose Reyes, off the position.
Yeah, put him at second base. Also, insanely tied to like so many other Mets managers that we're going to talk about here. He technically got his first ever coaching job under Bobby Valentine in Texas with the Rangers in 1986. And then when he got the Astros job, he was fired, and Terry Collins took over in 1993.
That is really funny. Look at you with the fun facts here.
But horrible. Just legitimately one of the worst managers ever. I think he has to go in F.
Yeah, I guess F. But the thing is, when you look at these other guys, there are so many that are much worse. Like I could hear an argument for Art Howe and D, but I support the F.
Yeah, I mean, I think also too for me, like I loved Bobby Valentine. We're going to talk about him next. That was the first manager of our lifetime. I loved that 2000 Mets team. I loved just rooting for those guys, and him being the guy after Bobby Valentine. I was like, ugh, like what a loser this guy was. And he was supposed to be like the guy that saved the Mets from kind of falling off like they did towards the end of Bobby V's time. But now let's talk about Bobby Valentine, James.
I mean, Bobby Valentine is kind of everything you want for a Mets team. Those late '90s teams, they were really good, like uber talented teams, but there was still this like hodgepodge attitude. Those rosters, kind of like not like little engines that could, but it was a little bit chaotic for them to get the success they had. And Bobby was like the lightning rod to rally around. All time players manager.
Yes, third most wins in Mets history, 536, which also is crazy that he's the third most wins, and he was there for really not that long. But yeah, the 2000 year was incredible, making it to the World Series. They had the crazy playoff runs in the past. He is one of, I believe, 2 Mets managers ever, and the only 2 times in Mets history that they've made the playoffs in back-to-back years. Bobby Valentine was manager for one of those times. Absolutely insane.
Basically the only real time.
Yeah, basically the only real time. He also had the classic Valentine disguise after he got ejected in the game, where he came back into the dugout with the mustache and the sunglasses on, which was crazy. And did you know, I got fun facts for some of these guys too. Bobby Valentine got promoted to Mets manager in 1996 after doing such a great job managing the Norfolk Tide down in the minors. They called Bobby V up at the end of 1996.
I always kind of love that when that happens. There was also Bobby Valentine, 3rd most ejections in Mets history. I'm excited to talk about the guys who are 4th most ejections in Mets. No, third most, which is always fun there. And something else that's going to be a similar run for a lot of these Mets managers. A lot of these guys did not manage in Major League Baseball after the Mets. Bobby's one of the guys that did. It took a long time for him to get another job, and that went so horribly when it did happen. But the Mets wound up being the last stop for a lot of different managers.
Yeah, and also I like that Bobby V went down swinging too. When he got fired, he just went at the Wilpons. He went at Steve Phillips. He said Steve Phillips invited him to a father-son, something going on at their church, and Steve Phillips showed up late to something that he invited Bobby Valentine to at his church. I loved Bobby V. I don't think we can put him in S because, again, that's got to be saved for the few guys that actually ever did win anything with this team. But I think Bobby goes in A.
Yeah, Bobby also he was cast with one of the worst free agent periods ever by any team in the history, I think, of sports before the 2002 season, when the Mets brought in Mo Vaughn, Roberto Alomar, Jeremy Brunitz in one shot, and those guys were combined almost negative WAR as a trio.
Was that with Bobby V or was that Art Howe?
No, 2002. That was Bobby V's last year. That was what got him fired.
Yes. You're right.
Or how came the next year? And again, expensive, bad team that even somehow found a way to play worse.
Yeah, so tough one, but as sad as it is, that's one of the best Mets managers in our history.
Yeah, another fun thing about Bobby V, he had 2 different stints managing the Chibolote Marines.
Yes,
he went
big
there,
in Japan.
Yeah, he went there right before he came back to the Mets bench. He was there in 1995, and then right after he was fired from the Mets, took a year off, 2 years off, and was in Japan again 2004, 2009 before somehow getting the Red Sox job and kind of letting that clubhouse go astray.
All-time guy I would love to have a beer with, Bobby Valentine, high on the list.
All-time guy I'd love to have a beer with. Probably even, which says a lot, the highest on this list. And there's a lot of guys I'd like to have a beer with on this list specifically.
But he was a mayor, too, at one point, and the AD, I think, of Holy Cross at one point. Like, a crazy life.
I know he's run for a lot of stuff in Connecticut. I don't know how many of those things he's won.
Okay, but I do know that he was big time at Holy Cross as well. All right, that's enough of Bobby V. Let's talk about someone that I think we are going to have a very different take than a lot of people. Buck Showalter.
Buck Showalter. This is also funny for us because this is Buck Showalter and Mark and James. We all worked for the Mets at the same time, 2022 and 2023.
All got our checks from Steve Cohen.
All got checks from Steve Cohen. Same, maybe possibly the same bi-weekly right there, or semi-weekly. It was, I really, really did not like Buck Showalter as a manager. I thought there were so many instances where he made bad bullpen decisions, didn't bring on the young players well enough, openly feuded with our general manager, which was very fun to be a part of on the inside, but it was, I could not stand this guy at the helm.
Yeah, when they hired him, didn't like it. It felt, I don't want to, tone deaf's not the right word because that would mean he's a bad guy, and I don't think Buck's a bad guy. I think Buck's great. I would love to get beers with Buck Showalter. He's a guy that seems like, again, he's an
as long as he doesn't know when we're saying this stuff.
Yes, all-time baseball guy, but it just felt like, why, like no one's hired this guy in 10 plus years or in 5-6 years. He went out horrendously with the Orioles, made one of the worst managerial decisions ever in a playoff game, not bringing in Zach Britton and going Ubaldo Jimenez. Like, it didn't really make sense outside of that was a name that maybe Steve Cohen knew, and that's why they hired him.
This also was like the time when Steve Cohen seemed like he was much more overtly involved of the day-to-day decisions that were happening in this organization relative to what's happened in the last few years, especially since David Stearns took over. I was cleaning out my room recently. I'm getting ready to move soon, and I found that Buck Showalter pullover they gave away in that September game in 2023 when the team was dreadful.
Way too much fanfare about the manager. I want my manager quiet, not like one of the... Like, your manager should be a face of the team because he, like, runs it, but, like, they had Buck Showalter cups in the stadium, and they were doing giveaways. Like, it kind of got crazy for a guy who, again, when the Mets needed that's, like, because he did a lot good. The Mets won a lot of games, of course, in that first year. But, like, when push came to shove, it seemed like he could never actually get that team back on track when they collapsed at the end of 2022.
And especially something else that was cool about Buck Showalter, my 2 favorite stats I'd like to share about him. One is that Buck Showalter was fired from a job before either of us were born. So after the 1995 season, he was also kind of wrongfully fired from that year managing the Yankees. Also, shockingly, he always talks about the fact, it's like, I was just sitting at home and I found out I got fired.
It's crazy.
But then there was a run where all these teams, the first 3 teams that dropped Buck Showalter, the Yankees 1995, the Diamondbacks 2000, and Texas Rangers in 2006, all found instant success when they dumped him, right? The Yankees won the World Series, began their dynasty the year after he left. The Diamondbacks miraculously won a World Series the year after he left. And the Texas Rangers, it took 2 years, but once Ron Washington got the show going there, they were in back-to-back World Series in 2009, 2010.
You could say that.
Or 10, 11.
The Mets went to the NLCS the year immediately after Buck got fired from there. So, like, there's something.
Something happens when he leaves.
I think I've got respect for Buck. I don't like the way that he manages the game. I don't think that he fits in modern baseball. There were a lot of ups and downs with him. I'm not going to put him in F again because the Mets made the playoffs. They had some good seasons.
He's a C still.
I think he's a solid C, 100%.
Yeah. And like there was a situation in 2023 where it was clear the Mets wanted to get some run for the younger players, and Buck continuously was playing Luis Guillorme over either Brett Baty or Mark Vientos III. There was that situation where
Francisco Alvarez stuff.
Yeah, Francisco Alvarez was losing playing time, moving around the lineup every single day. There was in 2022 when the Mets season really ended, when they had that huge series victory over the Dodgers, right at the turn of the month from August, September, where the Mets apparently celebrated a regular season series a little bit too much and then completely flopped after that, and Buck could not steer the ship to get them back on track as a at the time a 20-year major league managerial veteran.
And that was the thing that I think probably made us dislike Buck more than it was actually deserved, was that the polarization of the fan base of what kind of manager he was. They gave, there's a certain fan base that's they gave him all the credit, but then when things go wrong, it was never his fault. All of a sudden, this steady veteran manager, it wasn't his fault why the Mets couldn't figure it out for a month and a half and crumbled at the end of the season and also disappeared in 2023.
And really good news, Mark, for you, I, and everybody watching this video. We're all tied with as many victories in the championship series with Buck Showalter.
That's true. We all have 0. And that was the other thing. When people were like, this is an established manager, he's a winner. I'm like, where has
Doesn't
he
won
won?
anything.
He king of manager of the year, though. King.
Oh, yeah, I think he has 2 or 3 of them or something like that. Also, with Buck, it's fun how much he hates the Mets and David
respect
Stearns
the hell
now.
out of that.
I respect the most out of that. Every single time Buck Showalter has a chance to dump on David Stearns, the current Mets regime, he goes on either MLB Network, Foul Territory. He's doing his media availability, and he's letting everybody know he does not like the way they're running things now.
And that's why you love Buck. Again,
100%.
I love him managing any team that's not mine.
And also, I love a good vendetta like that.
Yeah, that's good hate. You don't get that a lot of days. All right, let's talk about another Met legend here, Bud Harrelson. Bud Harrelson managed the Mets from, what years do I have written down? Where is it on my notes? Good job by me, Bud Harrelson. 1990, 1991, short stint, and I think he wasn't the worst based on all the stuff that I've seen. They started off strong in 1991, but then collapsed towards the end, and they kind of had a quick axe to Bud.
The 1990, was it 90 or 91, where the Mets, it was just, they had a 90-win season, missed the playoffs. It was one of them where it was
I think
good.
it was
also
1990, because the first stint with him, he took over in 1990. I think he went 71-45 once he took over, and the Mets finished close to making the playoffs.
It was also a tough ask to take over for Davey Johnson because he was such a larger-than-life figure as the Mets manager who won a World Series but also kind of let the players run wild and really truly underachieve while he was there. We'll talk about Davey as we get down this list, but the Mets also love, especially through this era, love a former ball player, especially one on their team as the manager.
Yes.
As all baseball teams did in that era.
Yeah. Did you know that Bud Harrelson had a radio show on WFAN while he was manager of the Mets in the 90s, and he canceled it because Howie Rose was asking him questions that were too negative?
That's like
pulled the plug.
That's similar to Joe Torre being a player manager with the Mets.
Yeah. So Bud Harrelson, again, it was a short stint, and he did give them that push at the end of 1990, but then didn't really do much in 1991. Probably C-D range. I don't really have a feeling of someone who's that short and was okay.
I'd like to just bump Bud Harrelson up a leather grade because I give credit to anybody who's punched Pete Rose in the face.
Okay.
So I think I want to make him a C, just to add that little curve on there for being a WFAN guy and punching Pete Rose in the face, even though he was only manager for a year and a half.
Carlos Mendoza. Talk about a
tough one.
Talk about a tough one. And I think I know where he's going because you would have said 2024 S. You would have said 2025 F. So that probably lands him in C. And truthfully, that's kind of where I feel like him right now. I need to see more. I've seen one good, one horrendous. That being said, some of his decision making is suspect.
Yeah, definitely suspect, but at the same time, it's hard to really complain a lot about what he was given this past year. We were very critical of Carlos Mendoza's bullpen decisions, which at times felt like some of the worst things I've seen in my life. But also, it seemed like he was kind of playing really carefully because of what he had in his bullpen available to him. He kind of was forced to be a little bit more careful than most managers just would have to be in a more neutral setting.
Yeah, he seems like someone who I would love to see him succeed again. It would be great for the Mets next season, and I do think that he has value to this team. I don't think he's a god-awful manager, but it is hard to look past what happened in 2025 and not kind of still have a bad taste in your mouth with Carlos, despite how good 2024 was.
Yeah, for a young manager like Carlos, again, he managed a lot in the Venezuelan Winter League. You still want to get more reps and do it. The one thing that does kind of still make me a little bit curious and question what's going to happen with Carlos Mendoza this year is the fact that if you're supposed to be this good, happy, not I don't want to say happy-go-lucky, that's the wrong term, but just kind of this endearing, more player manager type, he's not a hard ass. You would like to see the players respond more when things go poorly.
Well, that's what I was going to say is that for a leader, from the outside, it feels like there's a lack of leadership in the 2 years that he's been there. It took J.D. Martinez coming in and the miracle that was Jose Iglesias in 2024 to get this team right. And then in 2025, it felt like there was nothing going on in terms of leadership. So like that's kind of where I feel like the manager is supposed to step in. You are supposed to be the leader of the men that you were managing, and I don't always feel that with Mendoza.
No, I definitely don't. But I mean, I still can't go lower than B or a C still.
I was gonna put him C just because I think it's right in the middle. You got to prove us next year, and then we can make a decision.
Yeah, one great year, one bad year, just average them out.
Yep, Casey Stengel. Let's talk about Casey, the original Mets manager.
Yeah, the original Mets manager. I mean, again, what Casey Stengel was given as a Mets manager, it's really hard to chastise him in any way. He had like probably 3 of the worst rosters in the history of baseball. His 3 years he managed this team, and it was definitely a net positive for the Mets to try and gain some instant credibility with a guy like Casey Stengel. Knew the New York media, was like kind of at the time like a god in New York. That's when managers were kind of revered as like some important than most of the players on the team. So the fact that he could be like quippy the way he was with the media and like not make some of these veterans, the veterans that were unlucky enough to wind up on the Mets and young players like not want to just quit playing baseball, but he did some things as this manager that really hurt this team in the long term.
Yeah, he was. I mean, the team was horrible. We know that. Again, you mentioned probably 3 of the worst rosters we've seen in a really, really long time in Major League Baseball, including one of the worst teams that's ever existed.
No, yeah, probably still the worst teams ever existed.
But also at the same time, like, I don't know how many more games you could have won. I'll almost give him credit for winning any games with some of the rosters that he had. Like, we love Ed Kranepool, but like the poor 17-year-old kid gets called up. They're like, all right, figure it out, man. Go play. You should be a junior in high school.
I do kind of a little bit blame Casey, though, for the Reggie Jackson, Steve Chilcott decision.
Sure.
Because when he was asked by the press about, like, oh, Reggie Jackson or Steve Chilcott, like, why'd you go for a catcher over Reggie Jackson, the best college hitter in the country? He was like, if we don't have a catcher, we're going to be running around a lot. The ball's going to go to the backstop every single pitch.
Yeah, no,
it's all right, guy, come on.
I think he also spoke about that with Hobie Landreth, who at the time, I believe, was a journeyman catcher, and they selected him in the expansion draft over a lot of, like, legitimate veterans. And same thing, he was like, well, you have to have a catcher. If we don't have a catcher, there's going to be a lot of pass balls.
Exactly. That was kind of his thing. And it's like there was always I know Reggie accused the Mets front office of some racism with the not picking him, but that comment I was always like, come on, guy. Like you like look who Reggie Jackson is. Why aren't we taking him?
Also, just some more fun things about him. Apparently took spring training like insanely serious. That first Mets spring training, they played against the Yankees in a spring training game and took it like it was a regular season game while the Yankees were treating it like it was spring training. Like, that was the Mets World Series. This kind of started the whole, like, I don't want to say LOL Mets because that's obviously new, but, like, the whole idea of, like, the Mets winning the World Series in March type thing.
Also, you have to remember that spring training in baseball until, like, what, the 90s? Like, that was actually like, oh, this is the first time these guys have exercised
to get ready
in 4 months. Like, I think that was a Davey Johnson thing where he used to make the Mets guys run sprints because they were so hungover every single morning. They were so woefully out of shape. It's like these baseball players, like, when didn't start lifting weights until, again, probably like the 80s.
Also,
like,
fun little story, too, about Casey Stengel. Mets held a party at a place called Toots Shores before Old Timers Day when they would hold that. He fell off a bar stool, broke his hip. Little bit murky as to what happened as to why that was. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he was pissed drunk because he didn't know until the next morning when he woke up that he had broken his hip, went to the hospital, needed extensive rehab, never managed for the Mets again.
I mean, if you tell me this, especially you talked about the rankings of this list of who we'd want to get a beer with.
All-timer.
If I could just if I have a time machine, Casey Stengel might be in my Mount Rushmore of guys I want to have a beer with.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. He's just one of the great characters in baseball. I have a hard time putting him anywhere lower than C, and I might just put him at B for the vibes.
We're just going to keep putting every single person in C.
So then let's put him in B. Put Casey in B despite managing 3 of the worst teams possibly ever. Also, winning games with them is an accomplishment of itself.
I'm more prone to move Carlos Mendoza to B than Casey Stengel. Casey Stengel had like a 30% win percentage.
All right, put him at C. Put him at C then.
Yeah, leave him at C.
Dallas Green. This is the famous manager of the worst team money could buy.
Yeah.
And basically didn't have a single second of being a good manager for the Mets.
I'd love to get our dad's takes on Dallas Green because I feel like he's the one who I hear the most like little quips and like little anecdotes from little sides of like I hated that manager.
Yeah, and there's not really too much that you can talk about. Like the team acted kind of like assholes and they performed terribly and in my notes, I just put complete ass. Like, again, the Mets spent so much money, and they were god awful. Maybe that's not fully his fault, but he got nothing out of his team.
Yeah, Brett Saberhagen filled the water gun with bleach, and I believe he shot at that Bob Clappish, who wound because of the book that he wrote, The Worst Team Money Could Buy, or vice versa, whichever order that happened in. Friend of the program, Bob Clappish. But it does reflect poorly on the manager when your player's acting that way.
Yeah, and I think this is a clear and obvious F.
Yeah, for sure.
Davey Johnson.
It's a fun one.
I think we can go down and say that this is probably the GOAT for Mets managers, right? I think he has the most wins in Mets history, got the 86 World Series.
I think this is blatantly not the GOAT.
You don't think so? You think it's going to be Gil Hodges?
Yeah. Gil Hodges. No, I mean, because Davey, he won that World Series, and he should get a lot of the credit for getting that team together, winning the World Series. But the way those Mets teams underachieved before and after that, I understand if there was a wild card, the Mets might have even snuck into another World Series because in 85, what they have? It was 90-something wins. They missed the playoffs because they lost the Cardinals.
Yeah, 87 was a bad year. 88 was when they lost to Mike Scioscia and the Dodgers. And you kind of just sometimes you lose in the playoffs. And then 89, 90 were a bit of a mess.
No, true. Again, Dave, he probably should still be in S tier because we have to grade in the curve of the other managers here. But the way that the careers went for some of the guys in that room, you probably would have. A manager with possibly a slightly different style could have maybe saved those young men.
He got the most out of the guys who were doing cocaine and drugs and hanging out in clubs until 5 a.m. And that was kind of an awesome period in baseball where guys were doing that. And something that we've even joked about a little bit with this Mets team. We need some guys doing some crazy shit. They missed
nothing like that. Nothing like that. Just going out a little
I'm not
bit.
saying cocaine, but going
being
out a little
clubs.
bit more. Yeah, being public figures like Keith Hernandez and Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden being public figures. Kind of don't really see that in baseball with a lot of guys anymore like that. But also at the same time, probably a big reason for their demise was that the Mets allowed them to keep doing this stuff.
Yeah, and Jeff Pearlman wrote the great book, The Bad Guys Won, about the 86 Mets. And it's one of the best anecdotes, I think, in sports history about after the Mets clinching the NLCS against the Astros and that was 18-inning game where everyone was just pins and needles the whole time. The team trashing the flight back from Houston with their wives, just getting pissed drunk. They had a big cake and they just smeared it all over the plane. People puking everywhere. The wives were on the flight and they all got trashed too. And then was that Frank Cashin who's GM of the Mets in '86?
Yes.
God, I know my dad's gonna yell at me for questioning that
yeah.
one. Basically telling Davey this is on you guys. You have to pay this bill. And Davey going in front of the team and ripping it up, saying we're not paying that shit. Let's go win the ball. Let's go win the series. Yeah, rah rah. And guiding the team back because they were down big in that series against the Red Sox. Even after the Bill Buckner play, had to go win a Game 7 and come from behind in a Game 7 to beat the Red Sox. But there's always that twinge of why was there not more consistent success for a team with a core that was the best in the whole league?
I think I have a reason. I think it was rampant drug and alcohol abuse.
Sure, but again, where's the manager? Where's the adult in the room then?
Yeah, it wasn't there. Definitely wasn't there. But yeah, he's in terms of Mets history, one of the best, if not the best manager. All right, next up, James, George Bamberger. This guy, unfortunate, just kind of a forgotten Mets manager, didn't manage very long. The teams that he managed stunk, and probably one of my favorite things, after he resigned from being the Mets manager after another bad season, quote to the media, probably suffered long enough.
Yeah, right. And there's another one. He just kind of gets swept away in the annals of history because this is
a forgettably bad team.
Between Yogi Berra and Davey Johnson, there was not a lot going on with these Mets managers.
Yeah, we're going to put Bamberger, I think, in F right there. Quick and easy.
Yeah, sadly, that's kind of it.
Gil Hodges died as the Mets manager. That's how much he loved this team. Miracle Mets 1969. Love Gil Hodges.
This is my GOAT. Gil Hodges is the one who I think is the best. Gil Hodges kind of guiding that team that was still objectively a mess when he took over in 1968 to becoming, winning World Series, being the best in baseball. Gil Hodges basically, in real time, inventing the platoon.
Yep.
Just having a deep bench and being we're going to mix and match our lefties and righties. Art Shamsky, Ron Swoboda, who else was part of those 1969 platoons? I haven't written down here. Kranepool, Clendenin, Al Weiss. This was...
Oh, it was fascinating to look back and see how he managed that team and how it took people a very long time to even adopt any of the theories that he had of how a team should be playing. He got talk about a guy who got the most out of his players. He put them in the best situations, got the most out of them, and that's how the Miracle Mets were even born, because you're this team won the World Series? How?
And we're eventually going to get to Yogi Berra at the end of this, but I think if we still had Gil Hodges, you might have found a way to win that 73 World Series as well with that.
Definitely. Yeah, no, he's one of the GOATs for sure. Mount Rushmore of Mets managers. He's without a doubt S tier. And again, died in spring training managing this team. Shout out Don LaGreca. They killed Gil Hodges. He also had a heart attack during the 1968 season in a game versus the Braves. This guy was about as unhealthy as could be, and that's what I loved about these old school managers. Chain smoked, drank, and won baseball games.
I mean, sensational managerial career, everything he did. Like, also, it was referred to as a mild heart attack, so give Gil Hodges some credit. He called it a mild heart attack there. He's like, I don't even care about that. Like, this is a guy who's just, I mean, quite literally a baseball lifer. He died still being a part of the game, but he's an absolute legend.
Yep, he goes in S tier. That was another easy one. All right.
He also got, who was it? It was like one of the Orioles starters. My uncle told me this story like a few Thanksgivings, Christmases ago. Like they basically, Gil Hodges noticed there was like shoe polish on a ball, and he got a pitcher ejected from one of those World Series games on the Orioles. Like big swing in that World Series.
I trust. He's the man. All right, now let's talk about someone that's close to us. Weirdly, a little connection between the Mets'd boys and Jeff Torborg. Fun fact. Me and James and Jeff Torborg, all alumni of Westfield High School in New Jersey. It's arguably one of the best athletes to ever walk through those halls. Kind of crazy to think about. Also, I think caught 3 no-hitters. He caught a perfect game from Sandy Koufax, caught a no-hitter from Nolan Ryan, and then I can't remember the third guy, but caught another no-hitter. One of the few players in history to ever do that.
I think Jason Varitek has the record with 4 caught no-hitters.
So, yeah.
I feel like it's Przinsky. I think Przinsky's up there too, and I think Maldonado was as well. But those are the elite catches in terms of catching a no-hitter.
Yeah, that being said, Torborg was not a great Mets manager. He took over for Dallas Green in the 1993 season. Mets gave him a contract afterwards, 4 years, $1.7 million, which was, again, one of the...
No, he was before Dallas Green.
He was before Dallas Green?
Did
I write that down wrong?
Yeah, it was Green right to Bobby Valentine.
My bad. Apologies about that. But yeah.
He came in after the Bud Harrelson.
That's it.
7 games by Mike Cubbage at the end of 94.
Yes.
And then it was Torborg got his shot.
There it is. I got those guys mixed up. But yeah, still wasn't good either, though. Bad. Not good at all.
Yeah, again, like this era of the Mets is not really a lot to write home about. Generation K, which we gave that one a shot.
Yeah, they tried, but Jeff Torborg, I think, also probably goes into the, F, D tier maybe?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, let's put him in the D tier for Westfield because we don't have any guys in the D tier yet.
Okay, can I spin it? I mean, he has one of the worst win percentages in Mets managers' history, but it's not the worst.
I'm trying to think. Was 1992, 93, was that when the arms started to blow out for Generation K? Was that 91?
Not quite sure. I'm not going to make a comment on that one because I didn't write that down in my notes.
I think this was also like one of actually the worst seasons in Mets history.
I mean, he was 85 and 115 in his time as the Mets manager. Like
I mean, I think he got fired like in May of 93. Like he was 13-25 and the team wound up winning 59 games. He got fired.
Probably goes to F tier.
Yeah, so Howard Johnson was still on that team somehow. Jeez.
That's crazy, yeah. All right, let's...
Dwight Gooden was still on that team.
Torborg goes into F. Sorry, Jeff.
Dwight Gooden pitched 208 and 2/3 innings in 1993 Mets. That's incomprehensible thinking back about the time of this team.
How crazy is it that there's been at least 3 people from Westfield High School that have been employed by the New York Mets? Just saying.
That is insane. Yeah, right? At least 3.
Minimum. At least 3. I don't know about the rest of the positions in the front office, in the organization, but Mets manager and podcasters, you got 3 right there.
It breaks my brain that like Bobby Jones, Sid Fernandez, Brett Saberhagen, and Dwight Gooden
all played on the same team.
All pitched on the 1993 Mets.
That is kind of crazy.
That's nuts.
Jerry Manuel. This is one of my personal least favorite managers ever. He snaked Willie Randolph so hard with the Wilpons. Snaked to get that job. I don't think gets enough credit for also collapsing when he was manager and having some of the worst unwatchable Mets teams ever. And bad friend to Willie Randolph. Bad friend.
And I'll say this, though. Like, that 2008 Mets team was nowhere close to the caliber of 6 and 7. They did still collapse, but that team wasn't anywhere near as disappointing as what happened after. And I'll give Willie Randolph some credit that the team, it got much worse after him for a short period of time. Like, those early Terry Collins teams were way worse than those late Jerry Manuel teams.
Yes, and for Jerry
Manuel. Not either of those guys' fault, but yeah.
Jerry Manuel was just the king of like a 500 team. Loved being not good, not bad. And that's also probably a combination, too, of the Mets front office, but I did not like Jerry Manuel. 12-year-old Mets Mark was like, this guy, can this guy do anything right? It seemed like he couldn't make any right decisions.
I mean, we also had a pretty bad taste in our mouth with Jerry Manuel after the way things went down. Also, again, he's continuing on this trend of the Mets managers not getting other managerial jobs ever again.
Does he go in F or D, though? Because relatively speaking...
I'm comfortable putting D because...
That's what I think.
The team's fought under him. Like, even the 2010 Mets, devoid of talent, almost dragged themselves to a 500 record.
Yes. Like, they weren't the worst, but, like, you look at the guys in F, those were some of the worst Mets teams ever.
Yeah,
except Casey Stengel. Never doubt Casey Stengel.
But those were some of the worst teams ever.
This has got to be, I think, the most forgettable Mets manager ever, Joe Frazier.
I mean, good name.
Great name. Not nearly as prolific as the boxer, but Joe Frazier, the Mets manager, They brought him up from the minors. He was one of like the great minor league minds that the Mets had at the time when they brought him in. He was brought into he was replaced by Joe Torre. They gave him zero time. They were like, Joe Frazier, the job's yours, and then quickly said, never mind. We'd actually rather have our player manage the team.
Yeah, which I think is kind of him getting a bad rap because he was like, it was just
Fine.
it was a bad start to a season. Like the Mets were so bad after the kind of 73, 69 core fell apart, basically until Davey Johnson in the early 80s. And the fact that he led 500 records, but I think back then it was just there were so few playoff spots. If you weren't close to those, I guess they took any chance they could to get rid of him. But it was, again, a guy that did not get a managerial job ever again after this.
No, and the Mets gave him little opportunity to even prove if he was worthy. Like, he managed 200 games. That's a season and a half. And being near 500, it's kind of crazy. We probably lack the context of what was going on with the team, just again, because it was so long ago, but probably D for him as well.
So here's a fun fact about Joe Frazier as well. It took him 5 years after this to get another managerial job in baseball. He was the manager of the Louisville Redbirds, the AAA team for the Cardinals. And you know who managed that team after him?
Joe Torre?
Jim Fregosi.
Ooh, okay. There's a little fun fact.
Yeah, a little piece. Was Jim Fregosi, was he Tom Seaver trade? No, he was Nolan Ryan trade.
Yes.
Nolan Ryan trade. So I guess, again, Joe Frazier, why not give Joe Frazier a C? He was over 500 for two full seasons.
No, he wasn't over 500.
For 2 full seasons he was.
He only managed from 76 to 77.
I have him in 76, and I have my bad. 86, 76 in his 1 full season. Then 15 games under into May is next season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to see if you got fired after 200 games.
I guess not wrong.
Joe Torre, woof. I mean, weird scenario again because as a player manager, but also genuinely one of the worst managers ever.
Yeah, it's kind of fun that he was a player manager, though, right?
I think that's like one of the cool things that sports used to do, but also at the same time, absolutely insane to have your player also be the manager is nuts.
Yeah, psychotic from a standpoint of like, why would you do this? And again, like those teams that he managed with were horrific. Again, he took over a team that went over 500 the year before, so like, what are you going to say about that? And just, I don't know, he kind of was terrible. 400 win percentage, just dreadfully bad.
And they gave him so many opportunities. He was the manager forever with this team. I think he's a hard F, Joe Torre.
I mean, he was a player for most of the time.
Yeah, but I think he's an F.
Yeah, he's a blatant F here.
Luis Rojas, my prodigal son. I think this guy's still going to get a chance to be a great manager one day, but boy, did he stink with the Mets.
I mean, what did we say about Luis Rojas? It was strange timing. It was a strange situation.
He wasn't even supposed to be the manager.
Yeah, he became the manager kind of the time. I can't believe you missed Carlos Beltran on here. Why don't we have Carlos Beltran?
0-0. Carlos Beltran S tier.
Yeah, but it's just, I don't know. It seemed like at the time Rojas was a bit over his head. He was lauded for being a good manager in the system, but it was.
Well, he got the classic job now that we've known is like
quality control.
Yeah, is the manager in waiting, a guy that's just not ready yet, which is quality control, and that was supposed to be his role under Beltran. And then when Beltran got fired because he was involved in the Houston Astros cheating scandal, which also at the time he shouldn't have been fired for that. Who gives a shit?
Well, we don't know that he was involved. It's come out that he might have been like the architect of it.
Who cares? Whatever. That's it. You know what? That's what I want my manager. I want my manager thinking about ways that they can cheat to win because the Mets don't win enough, and if we had to do it that way, I would have been fine. But Luis Rojas, it was like the peak when it started was great because remember, he was very active with defensive changes and using platoons and getting relievers in at the right time. But then it slowed down, and as soon as there was any amount of pressure, it just seemed like Luis Rojas crumbled.
And it seemed like a guy like Luis Rojas might have gotten another shot if Steve Cohen wasn't getting more involved and wanted to get a established guy, like they said, Buck Showalter in the fold. But he's also like, Yankee fans don't really love him for the decisions he makes as their third base coach either.
No, I think I'm not willing to put him in F, but I would put him in D.
I'd be happy to put him in D. He still didn't reach the playoffs.
No, but definitely I don't think was, again, like these other guys here.
No.
This next person...
is there anything below F?
I mean, it would be jail or garbage, I think. But yeah, Mickey Callaway is obviously going in F. As a person, not great. Bad guy.
Very bad.
Like. Very, very bad guy.
Worst kept secret in baseball.
I'm just going to talk about him as a manager. It's crazy how every single year it felt like the Mets started off incredible and then fell off a cliff about as fast as they got good. And never forget when Mickey Callaway batted the Mets out of order. That's like top 5 dumbest moments a manager could ever have.
I mean, is it dumber than trying to fight a reporter?
Yeah. Shout out our friend Tim Healy, friend of the podcast. We miss you, Tim, covering the Mets. Was ready to start swinging on him.
Yeah, and also to get all this underscored by the fact that seemingly every single woman the guy ever interacted with was creeped onto a level of illegality on it by him.
Never forget to all the national reporters when he first got signed, praised the
locked
Mets
up.
for signing Mickey Callaway, and then all of a sudden it was like, this is the worst kept secret. It was interesting how that got spun. But yeah, I mean, this guy
Flips very fast.
Yeah, this guy sucked. And boy, did I hate Mickey Callaway.
He was smug. He was just a jerk. Like
He was
it was
such a
so
jerk.
it was so hard to root for him.
What was
Like,
the thing that he would say after every game?
Again, I blocked every single thing that happened with Mickey Callaway directly out of my brain.
I don't want a manager that seems to be like very well manicured. And it seemed like he cared about his look more so than actually managing the game.
Yeah, I want a manager who looks so ridiculous in the baseball uniform that it brings me joy. Also,
I want my manager looking tired. I don't want them looking like they just came out of like pumping in the gym and got a clean shave every game.
I also don't know if this is coming out before or after the video we just recorded about the grading every single Mets offseason since 2010. But those 2019 Mets, like if Mickey Callaway was a bit quicker on his trigger to stop going to Edwin Diaz and Yuri's Familia and now continue to give more save and set up opportunities to Seth Lugo and Justin Wilson, that team likely reaches the playoffs and they have all the tools to go on a run in that situation.
Literally, yeah, they that could have been a
Horrible.
ridiculous good team. But yeah, F for Mickey Callaway. All right,
Firm F.
Terry Collins. I think this is gonna be one that we disagree with.
A little bit.
I fucking love Terry. Like he is, I think maybe my favorite Mets manager. Like I love Bobby Valentine because that's when I started being a Mets fan. But TC, like he managed some of the worst Mets teams ever. But that 2015 run was magical, and he does something that we just don't see from managers nowadays, and it probably won't happen very rarely ever again in baseball, which was just very, very frank with the media, said whatever he wanted, called out his players, but also was a player manager. He was someone who lived and died every single game.
Definitely. And I think also just based on lack of choices, he's also my favorite Mets manager in my lifetime for sure, by far. But I do think that you fall into this like revisionist history situation with Terry Collins where
he made bad decisions.
he was subjectively not that good of a manager. I don't think he was a bad manager, but there were just so many times where it was like, oh, God, Terry Collins is going this reliever again. He's like, how many times he run out Henry Mejia out there trying to get one more shot, Rafael Montero when he came back
Bobby
up for a
Parnell.
tiny stint. But like there were so many times, even through 15 and 16, where it was like, oh, I can't believe he's doing this again. And where our favorite bit that we do in season, the Mets'd Up socials, is run the Terry Collins speech.
Yes.
That was 2016 he gave that one?
Yeah, 16, and then they turned that season around like ASAP, where he was like, basically, if you're not ready to
Not
be-
ASAP.
Well, they turned it around.
I think like the 20 games after that, the team it was like 9-11 or something, which is funny.
But then they brought up the guys that were ready to go. That's
100%.
when got a little Lugo and Gesellman action there. But like, yeah, calling out the players that if you're not ready to play every single day, we'll find new guys who are. And I kind of love that about managers. At the same time, you probably can't do that anymore.
No, definitely not. And again, like he was tons of fun. I think he was exactly what that team needed. That was again that 2015. It was a scrappy underdog, got to prove ourselves team.
Fight.
They rode for Terry. It's cool when the team and the players match the personality of their manager. I think that always goes to show a team that's like really coalesced and come together. And they did that for him. We get all the credit in the world for getting guys that play just hard as fuck for a manager.
I want to fight for Terry and A. I have a feeling you're going to fight back on that.
I was very happy with Terry and
Oh,
A.
cool. All right. Terry and
100%.
A. I love that.
Reach the World
Terry-
Series. Like,
yeah,
this-
reach the World Series. And also
That's the curve here.
Just in terms of like, just all-time guys that we like, another guy I would kill to have a beer with.
Oh, all-time kill to have a beer with Terry Collins. Especially the fact that
I'd love to get him on
we
the
still
Messed Up
could.
podcast. Yeah.
Also, we could probably pull that one off as well.
Yeah, we're going to have to maybe pull some strings there, see if TC will come on. I'm not sure how familiar he is with Riverside, but we'll find out.
No, I don't know. Well, he has his own podcast. I'm sure he knows a little bit.
Maybe. I don't know. He's quite old.
Yeah, I guess.
Wes Westrom. Is this the name that you knew before we did this, James? Because I did not.
No, but I did like some light research on it. He was part of the 1951 Giants pennant, and Willie Mays loved him. Apparently, in Willie Mays' book, he described Westrom as built like a block of granite.
That's kind of a sick description.
And praised him as one of the best defensive catchers of that era.
Similarly, though, he was the manager after Casey Stengel took over for him. Fun fact about him, first manager to ever manage a Mets team that didn't finish in last place. Wes Westrom. They finished in
That's
ninth
sick.
that year.
And again, another tie where the Mets were trying to gain legitimacy for their new expansion team. And they were like, let's bring in New York guys. Do you know the name of the person who took over for Wes Westrom when he got fired for in 67?
Don't know. What was his name?
Salty Parker.
Salty Parker. That's crazy.
Salty Parker managed a handful of games for the Mets, and yeah, that was a guy who took over. Salty Parker went 4-7 in the last 2 weeks of the 1967
They fired
season.
him for a week is crazy. That's nuts.
He resigned.
Oh, sorry.
Which is almost funnier.
Can I interest you in B for Wes Westrom for being the first manager ever to not finish in last place?
Oh yeah, I'm for sure with that. And he helped, bring up Tom Seaver. Like he was there when Tom
That's
Seaver
true.
arrived to the show. Like I give him credit for that.
Yeah, they on Wikipedia when they talk about him, they're like, it's just crazy bad timing. Like all the good players that the Mets had in the late '60s and early '70s just missed Wes Westrom by like a year.
When's the first time the Mets hired a manager that had no connection to New York? Was it Roy McMillan? I know he's not on this list because he wasn't interim, but we got to do some research on Roy McMillan, or was it Joe Frazier?
Well, Joe Frazier was in the Mets farm system, so he.
Okay, so that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I don't. Salty Parker, I'm sure, was on the staff. Of course,
Salty
he's
Parker.
promoted for 11 games, and he got signed. But in terms of full-time managers, Casey Stengel, former Yankee; Wes Westrom, former Giant; Gil Hodges, former Dodger; Yogi Berra, of course; Joe Torre, and then Frank Howard.
Yeah.
Another interim manager. So the Mets just, and even you get to 1991, Bud Harrelson. The Mets had about 30 years of history of almost only hiring managers that were previously connected to the organization.
Absolutely insane. All right, final two guys here. Willie Randolph. Oh, poor Willie.
This is gonna be tough. I mean, it's so hard to analyze Willie fairly because he sat at the helm of two of the worst collapses in the history of the sport.
Yep.
And he never got another job, which is fucking crazy. But also, he sat at the helm for the worst two collapses in the history of the sport.
And at the same time, 2006 was pretty awesome. I mean, I know it ended poorly, but that team was so good.
And it was nice to see a guy like Willie just really let the young players on his team have a lot of personality and kind of run with that personality. It's not that was more rare in that era of baseball. We kind of forget how long ago 20 years was in terms of what young baseball players are, for lack of a better term, allowed to do in this day and age.
Yeah.
The fact that Reyes and Wright were able to slowly become leaders. They were on magazine covers. They were crazy public appearances. Reyes was dancing. People were singing his name, and he was stealing and rounding second base on triples. It was cool that a manager like Willie let a young, dynamic player do that when some managers in the league still at that time would not have kind of let that shit fly.
And funny enough, I think revisionist history, again, it's two of the worst collapses ever.
Ever.
That's tough. But overall, he wasn't. He just happened to have two of the worst collapses ever. Those Mets teams still won a ton of games, and I believe in terms of win percentage for Mets managers, he's he's second all time. He's 302 and 253 with a 544, but also just one of the worst when there was pressure. Boy, did he absolutely collapse.
I'll also say this too: for a lot of those 2007 games, I know sometimes it bounced back and forth. It was the way the era was, and I get that. 2006. Why was David Wright hitting fifth?
Of course.
The guy was one of the best players in baseball. He's hitting fifth. I understand it was a lot more about veteranship and seniority at that time. How did Papalo Duke a second because how much contact he made? If David Wright's hitting second in Game 7, you might win that game.
No,
you
Mets
probably
win
win that game.
sure.
And that part will always kind of piss me off. But again, I can't blame Willie. That was still what the times were saying.
I'll be honest. Probably D, right? Just because of those collapses.
I thought you were going to say C or B, and I was going to argue for D. So that's fine with me.
Yeah, I think it's got to be D. You can't have those ends to the season and ever be anything better than a bad manager.
No.
And never got hired again. Says a lot.
No, does it? I don't know. It was weird that he never got hired again. I almost thought he got the raw end of the stick for not getting hired again.
I mean, probably because, again, those teams still won 87 games a year, and I think, especially with the playoff format expanding, they would have made the playoffs a lot of times.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yogi Berra, last guy.
Yogi.
Shout out Yogi. Now, this is the all-time baseball guy, Yogi Berra.
Yes. As a guy, as an all-time dude, Yogi Berra is one of the coolest of all time.
Without a doubt.
Coming over, immigrant family, gunner in World War II, 11 rings.
Yeah, could put him on all his fingers in one toe.
One of the best catchers in the history of the game.
Quotes for days.
Yeah, quotes for days. One of the most decorated players in the history of the game. At the same time, he made some really bad decisions down the stretch of 73. This is probably hilarious to hear me, a 29-year-old, say something like that, but the fact that he ran 42-year-old Willie Mays, who wasn't hitting out in center field every single game, was crazy. And then a lot of people will chastise him historically for rolling with Tom Seaver in short rest in Game 6.
Yeah, he definitely did a lot bad, but at the same time, again, not even close to one of the worst managers ever in Mets history, just because there are so many bad ones. It seemed like Yogi maybe shouldn't have been managing the team for as long as he did.
Sure, but he also he helped oversee that Bud Harrelson Pete Rose fight in the 1973 NLCS I've talked about before. It was just it's weird that he made, I don't know, like again, par for the course. Not going to chastise pit players, managers for making decisions what the time dictated, but that was a couple of those things were really rough looking back.
Yeah, super rough times for Yogi. Ultimately, though, probably what CB range, I think.
Wasn't he also the manager when there was that situation with Cleon Jones?
Ooh.
We got caught with a woman in his car, I want to say. Like, I don't know if that was just before or just after Yogi. I can't remember exactly, so I'm not going to reference that one. But it's just, it's... Well, again, that was the time.
C or B?
B. He still reached the World Series.
All right, we'll put Yogi in B. As you guys can tell from looking at this tier list, a lot more bad Mets managers than good ones. And again, there have only been 2 managers in Mets history that have ever made the playoffs in back-to-back years.
Only really one.
Bobby Valentine and Terry Collins.
One of those Terry Collins was a 1-game playoff.
Yeah, so bad history of managers, bad history as a franchise. Love to know what you guys think about the tier list down in the comment section below. Who did we rank wrong? Who did we not give enough credit to? Would love to hear what you have to think. Subscribe to Mets Up on YouTube if you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Drop us a rating, drop us a review, download, and subscribe. You can follow James on social media at
James Shiano.
And I'm Draft Nick Mark. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.
Peace out, guys. Let's go Mets.